Welcome to another episode of the Siege Podcast, a daily show where we preview the week ahead from a betting perspective. I'm your host, Travis Harris. Joining me today, as always, are the rest of the Siege guys, minus Jordan, but we have Devin Hadley and James Roth with us today. At the end of the episode, each of us will give you 3 plays that we like ourselves during our Locks of the Week segment, and we'll also give out 1 Siege VIP play that we have sent already to our clients. So make sure you stick around for that or skip to the end if you prefer, whatever works. We're just glad to have you listening. Let's start off by reviewing last week. It was another profitable week for Siege VIP clients as we moved to an impressive 32-19 for a positive 18.6 units this football season. Yesterday, we tweeted out 25% off our packages, and we will extend that through the weekend. If you want to win with us, send us a DM on Twitter at PickSiege, and we'll get you set up. Remember, college basketball is right around the corner as well, and we'll be setting up a promo for that soon also. So reviewing last week, Dev, any takeaways or surprises?
Actually, unfortunately, I was in Vermont last weekend, a whole family trip out for a wedding, so I didn't get to watch much football other than the state game, and I watched the second half of the Michigan game. Nebraska found another way to lose the game. They are the Lions of college football. And that's all I got.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the comparison to the Lions. I think that's pretty spot on. Wow, is Nebraska just poorly coached and maybe a little bit of bad luck as well. Glad to have you back. Sorry you were in a state that is not legalized gambling yet. That must have been awful. James, any takeaways or surprises from last week?
Well, I know you're going to get to. I'll let you cover the Oklahoma Texas shit show. So I'll let you handle that. I'm not going to go there.
Right.
I'm going to go instead with. I'll talk a little bit about the Penn State Iowa game. We were big on Iowa, really big, and I will say, wow, is this backup quarterback for Penn State terrible? I might send him like a Siege shirt or something because wow, did he save all our bets? God bless him. But I don't know what's up with Sean Clifford. They're keeping that kind of pretty tight. So keep an eye on that. If he's out for a long period of time, their big games are coming up with Michigan State, and Penn State. So their gauntlet's coming. Iowa, I think they are what we thought they were, where if their defense can get turnovers for them, they can, handle it. Their offense just isn't that great or explosive. So I think Penn State was able to keep them in check for so long, and then once Clifford went out, Iowa just, their defense kind of enforced their will, and it was just too much for Penn State to overcome. So, yeah, that pretty much was the big game for me my major takeaway, I would say. And like Devin said, Nebraska found a way to lose that game against Michigan. As you know, I'm happy about that, but that's all I have to say about last week.
I had Michigan -2 as well, so I was not upset to see Nebraska throw that game away either. You make a good point about Penn State's backup quarterback. Wow, was he just terrible? And maybe instead of sending him a Siege shirt, maybe we send him a package of our Siege golf tees, because he really needs to just pull a J.R. Smith and just move over to golf. I think that was him, right? With NCA&T.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe he should pick up. Maybe he should put down the pads and pick up a club. But yeah, we were on Siege, we were on Iowa last week, and we definitely cashed those bets for our clients, which was great. So shout out to Roberson for sure. James, you mentioned that Texas Oklahoma game, and Texas was just rolling. I talked about last week. That was my underdog play of the week. Had a money line as well. I mentioned Spencer Rattler just isn't that good. And we saw that last week full force. And the guy comes in, throws 2 picks right off the bat. They bench him. Backup quarterback, Williams, I think is his last name, comes in and just lights out, brings him roaring back. But yet they're still using Rattler in some very strange spots last week, 2-point conversions and other weird downs and distances. Apparently on Twitter, sounds like Rattler is going to be leaving Oklahoma. I don't know. Maybe he should pick up the clubs and him and Roberson can team up, play some golf together. But that was just an ugly, ugly beat for Texas. Anyone had a money line, especially anyone who had him plus 3.5. Oklahoma really should have kicked the field goal to win that game. And of course, they break a touchdown, 40-yard touchdown run with 10 seconds left. I mean, just 6. So that's all I'll say about that. Should have been 3-0 in my picks last week, but we move on and we pick winners anyway. So the other thing I wanted to talk about from last week is, obviously the huge Texas A&M shock upset against Alabama. Alabama has looked sketchy, but that defense is good. But I don't know. My mind still is boggled on this one with Texas A&M. Their offense is really bad, and Alabama's defense is really good. So there's just a strange game to me. Maybe it's just a one-off. We talk a lot about overreactions on this show. My reaction is Georgia is the best team in the country, and I hope that's not an overreaction. But man, they're just blowing teams out, and I do think they're better than Alabama. So let's move on to previewing the week ahead. We'll start with Georgia, Kentucky. Georgia's 21.5-point favorite at home against Kentucky. 21.5 is a lot of points to cover, but Georgia's no stranger to covering large spreads and blowing teams out, especially at home. I just mentioned that I think they're the best team in the country. I think I'd have to lean Georgia here. Dev, James, any thoughts on Oklahoma or Kentucky and Georgia this week? Dev, I know I think you have them as one of your locks, not to get ahead of ourselves, but
I do. I like Georgia minus 21.5. I like the under at first, but it's so low, and I feel like Georgia might be up at the end, and Kentucky scores a late touchdown or two, and it's too low and under for me to touch right now. So I'm just going to lay the 21.5 with Georgia. I think they steamroll Kentucky. I think Kentucky is one of those teams. They're 6-0, but they're not quite as good as their ranking or their record. I think Michigan State might be in that group too, just as an unbiased fan. But I think Georgia lays it on them pretty good here, and scores enough, has enough big plays, gets the job done for us.
Yeah, that Georgia defense is really good. So I would have to, originally look at under with you as well. But you're right. I think this game has garbage time touchdown or two that means nothing for the outcome of the game written all over it, which could make some people really happy and make some people really upset. So I do think the laying the points with Georgia is the way to go in this one. One more ranked matchup ahead this week, Oklahoma State +4 at Texas. We already talked about Texas. That was just an implosion. That was just strange. I don't think Oklahoma State's that good. Dev, I know you do. So we differ a little bit there. But I originally leaned Texas in this one, but this line or this over-under opened at 59 points. That's low. I mean, if you look back at all the Texas-Oklahoma State games, classic Big 12 matchups, that's got to be one of the lowest. I haven't done the research, but it's moved up to 60 now. My favorite play of these two ranked games is the over at 60. I think this is going to be a classic, old-fashioned Big 12 shootout. So give me the over. Dev or James, anything on this Texas and Oklahoma State game?
I'll just say I'm on the fence. I can definitely see where you're coming from when it comes to, being one of those classic, shootouts, potentially, double, triple overtimes even, and score both teams in the 40s, whatever. But for some reason, my gut is telling me with this one, Texas is just going to come out and kind of be deflated from last week and not, it's a back-to-back ranked matchup. So I would hope that, they don't just come out and just lay an egg. But just something about this Oklahoma State defense is getting a lot of respect. Whether they should be or shouldn't be, I don't know. I mean, they've played Baylor, Kansas State, Boise State. They've played decent teams, but nothing of this caliber offense that Texas has. So it'll be interesting to see, if their defense can hold up and what their offense can really produce for them. Because, Texas, as we saw last week, they can't they're once again terrible on defense. I think that was kind of proven last week, and they gave up those 35 points to Texas Tech in that big shootout when they scored 70 themselves. I mean, so it'll be interesting. I'm not going to touch this game, but for some reason it just kind of smells like Texas may lay an egg here, but we'll see. I'm curious to see how this one ends up for sure.
Yeah, it's got to be a challenging spot as a coach to come in. You're back home, try to get ready for another ranked matchup after the way you blow that game and then lose outright in that fashion last week. I could definitely see a slow start for sure. We'll see what happens. It'll be a good game to watch, that's for sure. I think it's a noon game too. So I'll have Sparty on one TV, Texas and Oklahoma State on the other. Dev, how about any other? I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing I'd note on that game is Oklahoma State had a bye last week. So they're coming off a week's rest, 2 weeks of prep. So that's another thing to note for sure. So we'll see if that, if that plays into it at all.
Yeah, what we'll have to do is look and see the career record of Oklahoma State coming off a bye, what their ATS record is, especially as an underdog. I'd be curious to see what that is before making a final decision in this play. Maybe we'll do that and we'll tweet it out before Saturday's game to let the listeners know. Dev or James, any other games catch your eye this week or?
No, after not watching last week, I'm still just still
Playing
on
catch up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope, not off the top of my head. I mean, this Arkansas-Auburn game that could be interesting. Arkansas coming off that tough loss, kind of maybe a get right situation for them being at home against Auburn. I mean, they're both teams 4-2. Clearly, I mean, Arkansas coming off of thrashing from Georgia and then that loss to Ole Miss, they're kind of reeling a little bit, but they come back home now. I could see them pulling this one out. Not huge, but I think they cover. So I'll be curious to see how that and how Bo Nix, how he does against that team. But yeah, I would take the Hogs in that one myself. But other than that, not a huge slate where I'm keeping an eye on this week, but that one for sure. I'm looking up the stat for us on the Oklahoma State. I'll see if I can get it to us before we're done here.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks for doing that. It's funny. I was going through the slate of games, and first of all, it's a much lower slate of games. Not as many slate of games this week, and I'm going through trying to find some value, something to talk about for this podcast, and I just realized this is actually a pretty gross slate this week, in my opinion. I don't see a ton of value, especially in comparison to the last couple of weeks. So it'll be a lower card for Siege this week, it looks like, but or a lesser card, I should say. But still, we found a little bit of value, just not as much as we have seen in the past. But with that being said, let's move to the underdog pick of the week. I did find a little bit of value here. Again, fading a Boise State team that we talked a little bit on. Oklahoma State won outright in Boise. But I'm going to look to take Air Force to cash another ticket for me this year, taking them +4 on the road at Boise, which is always a tough place to play. But Air Force is 2-0 against the spread on the road this year. And surprisingly, with how tough of a place to play as an away team it is on the blue turf in Boise, Boise State's actually only 1-2 against the spread at home, losing both those games outright. And one of them as a favorite. And against Nevada. So I'm going to take Air Force +4, and I'm also going to sprinkle a little bit on the money line. James, what do you got for underdog pick of the week?
Underdog pick of the week for me is actually going to be on Friday. Syracuse going against Clemson. I got them early. It was like +14.5. I think it's still hovering around the 14 mark. We'll be sprinkling money line for sure. but I think they at least keep it within the 2 touchdowns. I don't. Syracuse at home, night game on a Friday. Yeah, why not? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I like it. I think I'm definitely taking Syracuse with you. So I do like that pick. And it's more of a fade Clemson pick. I think it's weird to say, but that's just what we've come to in 2021. Dev, what do you got? Anything?
Yeah, I kind of like LSU getting 11.5 at home. I know public loves Florida. That line's gone up a point, but I like the home team here. Coach O, was coaching first job. I think he's gonna rile the team up, and I don't think they win, but I think they keep it, within 10 points, make it a game at least. And I think Florida's a little bit overrated. They, almost beat Bama at home, so people think, they're really good, and they have been playing well. But I just think they're a tad overrated. This line's a little bit inflated. LSU's a tough place to play. I'll take the home team.
That's for sure. Awesome. Well, let's move into our locks of the week. Before we get into that, I wanted to note all 4 of us went 2-1 last week, and a couple of us should have hit our third pick, but hopefully everyone listening tailed all or some of those winners last week and cashed some tickets with us. Dev, you want to keep us rolling and go right into your locks of the week?
Sure do. I got obviously Georgia minus 21.5. Might want to buy the hook just to be safe, but I like this. Think they roll. The other one I have is the under in the Syracuse Clemson game. I don't think Syracuse can score more than 10 points in this game, if that. And Clemson, the way their offense has looked lately, I don't think they score more than like 21 or so. I'll stay away from the spread because I don't know if Syracuse can score a single point, to be honest. I can see them getting shut out or having 3 points. So I'll just take the under 44.5 for hopefully, the first win of the weekend on Friday night. And this last play is my lock of the week, one of my favorite plays all year. I have it for 3 units myself, and I have it in every single parlay I've placed this week, which I don't recommend parlays, but they're fun, so you got to do them. But it's the first half under in the Michigan State-Indiana game. Indiana's defense is actually pretty good, one of the better defenses in the Big Ten. They're just on the field so much lately that they've given up some points, but they're finally getting healthy. I think their secondary is getting a starter or 2 back for this game against Michigan State. And Michigan State, they kind of rely on big plays, big explosive plays. And at what point are we going to stop saying Tuck coming, by the way? At some point, Tuck busted because he's 6-0, got him in the top 10. We got to stop saying Tuck coming. Tuck has arrived, all right? So I'm going to start saying Tuck busted, try to get that trending on Twitter. But yeah, those are my locks.
Love it. Three good plays there. Thanks, Dev. Jordan, as I mentioned earlier, wasn't able to join us tonight, so let me give his picks really quick. He's looking at a 6-6 record so far in locks of the week. He's taking Louisiana Tech minus 6.5, Florida LSU over 60. Which when he sent me that, I went on and I bet that right away. I somehow that slipped. I didn't see it or whatever. I love that play. So good one there, Jordan. And then he's chasing the Hawaii Nevada over 60 at the end of the night on Saturday. So those are Jordan's 3 picks. James, why don't you give us yours?
Before I do that, I found Oklahoma State stat for us when it comes to road games after a bye.
Great.
All right, you ready for this? Now you have to follow me. Mike Gundy, their head coach, became the head coach there in 2005. The stat I'm about to give you dates back to 2006. That was their first bye or road game following a bye. Okay, so they've had 8 such games with the road game after a bye. They are 2-5-1 against the spread in those games. Most recently, last year against Oklahoma, they got absolutely rolled, 41-13. Then a couple back in 2016, they also got rolled against Oklahoma. So interesting stat there. Take with it, or do with it what you will. But I think it's interesting. Mike Gundy apparently doesn't do well with bye weeks leading into road games. Either doesn't get him motivated. I don't know what it is, but I find that interesting, and I may end up taking back everything I said about Texas here. So we'll see. As for my picks for this week, I went with Tulsa and South Florida under 57. That total just seems high to me. I mean, neither one of these teams is great, and this very well I could end up, coming back to bite me, and this could end up being, game could be in the 60s or 70s, with the total, but I just think that's a little high. I think both these teams play kind of slow, and I think that should be able to hit that under. I'm also on the Nebraska Minnesota here. I got that under 48. Nebraska coming off that tough loss at home. I could see them maybe coming out of the gates a little slow. And Minnesota, I mean, they're just not very good offensively. And I think Nebraska's both these defenses should just have a field day. So like that under there. And going back to the Arkansas-Auburn game, I'm taking the over 53 in that one. I think we kind of saw last week Arkansas's defense maybe isn't as great as we thought they were. So feeling Bo Nix may be able to score a few touchdowns, and Arkansas's offense is legit. So I think this one should push over that 53 easily. So we will see. Here's mine.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And thanks for looking that up on the fly. That stat about Oklahoma State, that is very interesting. And I thought it was going to be weighted the other way. So, man, I might have to go back and look back into this total here at 60. It makes me a little bit nervous, but I'll do some research and I'll tweet out what I find. Before I give mine, I know Devin's wife, Amanda, is also with us. She has a lock of the week that she wants to send out. Amanda, what are you taking this week?
Thanks for having me today, guys. Definitely Cincy -21 and by the hook.
Love it. Always by the hook. And for those of you that don't know, Amanda's won our bowl pool pick probably 3 years. So she definitely knows what she's talking about when it comes to handicapping college football. I'll get into my locks of the week. I'm taking, of course, like I already mentioned, Air Force +4. UAB -16 at Southern Miss. I mentioned this last week. Southern Miss is they're terrible. It's an awful football team. I love UAB. If you listen to this podcast, you know that I've talked about them a lot. They're on the road. 16 points is a lot, but their offense is good, and Southern Miss is they're just bad. And then in the Battle of the Sharps, I'm actually on the opposite end of Jordan's pick in Louisiana Tech. I'm taking UTEP +7. So Jordan and I, we're going to have to come up with a little side bet here in the Battle of the Sharps to see who cashes their ticket. So that's what we have for our locks of the week. Our free Siege VIP play that we want to give out on the podcast. Last week, we sent Iowa -2, which, of course, cashed. We have Penn State's backup quarterback Roberson to thank for that. Our VIP picks moved to 1-1 on the podcast for the year. And this week, we're giving out Arizona State money line at Utah. So that'll do it for us on this episode of the Siege podcast. Follow us on Twitter at PickSiege. We did activate the new tip feature on our Twitter page. If you're enjoying these shows, or more importantly, if you're making some money from the info and the picks you're receiving, and you're feeling tipsy, feel free to send us some love or retweet the podcast or share with your friends. Let's all make some money together. Thanks for listening. Remember, always gamble responsibly, and it's all of us versus the sports books. Let's burn them this weekend. We'll be back next week.
Siege coming.